Hi, this is Advocate Nyari Mashiamombe. Welcome to Identities with Nyari Mashiamombe, your empowerment podcast, where we talk about everything social, economic, and everyday issues that affect us. In this special series, I'm excited to bring you powerful conversations from the Better Future Summit 2025, where leaders and thinkers shared insights on the future we are building together. Let us get into it.
I'm going to be very short. And I think at the center of this discussion is the issue about a human-centered approach or human-centered systems. When I look at the theme, it speaks about innovation, speaks about inclusion, and speaks about confidence. These are some of the most talked about, but less done about. But in the same vein, therein lies the opportunity for both business and society. So when something is still in conversation, speculation, or maybe is being over-talked about, and there's very little, or maybe there's less on the ground than there is in the conversations, there is actually a huge opportunity that still exists, and that opportunity needs to be seized. While informalization may be an unintended outcome, formalization ought to be by design. I think that we seem to have treated smallness or infancy in our economy and in our economic activities as marginalization and vulnerability, rather than a life cycle stage in the various business sectors or economic activity that we engage in. So as such, you will find that our policy approach initially to small, to micro, has been to try and provide for inclusion, but almost from a point of these are vulnerable and they need to be protected and they need to be assisted, but not necessarily being intentional to look at the different sectors of our economy or businesses and actually acknowledge that smallness and micro are part of the beginnings of activities in all those sectors. So what has happened is that we sometimes are able to then take charge of some of the challenges they face away from the sectors within which they exist. So when you are addressing small business and you are addressing micro businesses from a micro-focused policy approach, but not from the specific sectors where they come from, they remain vulnerable to the sector policies and sector regulation. Because the policies that govern smallness don't necessarily govern the sectors in which the small entities actually operate. And there's a challenge there. And also recognition that some of the small activities, small economic activities or micro activities are self-employment, and they are subsistence to a great extent, and must just be treated as tax-free businesses, because some of them are actually not turning over an amount that is equal to your minimum monthly tax-free threshold incomes. So what do we need for some of these in order to ensure that we start with formalization right from the beginning? Maybe all they need is actually identity in the first place. And just being able to be identified as a business or as an economic activity or actor should provide us with access and with the knowledge of how many economic activities we have and not require anything from them. We just should know where they are and what they are doing. But the moment we tie that identity to obligations that require them to pay taxes, to pay for regulations, which they probably can't afford, then we lose them. And we need to do this for long enough to build just confidence among some of these micro and small enterprises to be able to be willing to be part of an identified lot in the business sector, as it were. So there should not be any repercussions for registration. So registration should actually be incentivized. And we need to do it long enough for them to get comfortable with formalization, to get comfortable with knowing that somebody is going to come and inspect my business, but not require a fee from me for a certain period of time. The moment that is met with financial requirements that are probably outside of their reach, then we scare them away, and then they remain unaccounted for, uncounted, and probably also unserviced, as it were. Unfortunately, in what we are calling informalization or informal sector, as it is called, I worry that we actually got to a point of calling this a sector of our economy. In there, we also find that there are illegal activities that also take place in that micro-enterprise space because it is unregulated, it is unmonitored, and part of the reason is that the people that are doing micro businesses are actually not ready for regulation, and maybe that's not your source of tax. But as long as we can count them, as long as we know where they are, it's a very good starting point to formalization.
Welcome to Identities with Nyari Mashayamombe, your empowerment podcast where we talk about social, economic, and everyday issues that affect us. At Identities Media, we tell human stories that respect the storyteller, honor the viewer, and help build a compassionate and informed society. Our work celebrates unsung heroes and community change makers rising in the spirit of Ubuntu. As a producer and host, Nyari Mashayamombe brings her experience as a development practitioner, marketer, lawyer, storyteller, and filmmaker to ensure that every conversation is grounded, human, and deeply intentional. If you are an individual donor, a foundation, an NGO, or an institution that believes in uplifting marginalized voices, we invite you to financially support this storytelling journey. Your contribution helps us document human stories that shape policy, inspire action, and strengthen communities. We also welcome corporates, NGOs, and institutions to partner with us by sponsoring episodes or seasons, commissioning stories of change, or collaborating on documentaries, docuseries, films, and other impactful storytelling projects. You may also advertise on our platform. To donate, visit www.identitiesmedia.com. To partner or sponsor, contact us through the email and number on the screen. Identities with Nyari Mashayamombe, your empowerment podcast.
It is more difficult to address formalization as a way to try and cure informalization. So it is easier to do formalization as a way of doing business. Whether somebody is micro, is small, is medium, as long as there are no penalties, as long as formalization does not present an existential threat to them, that maybe tomorrow they will be closed, maybe tomorrow they will require to pay certain regulatory fees that they cannot afford. I will move on to digital citizens, and we have called them digizens. They are digital citizens. We are still relating with them as the citizens of the past. The world in which commerce was born and existed was a physical world, and the citizens of that world were born of men and women. They were midwifed by midwives in our various polyclinics or in round huts, as in my village, or in other places, on the way to clinics, in Scotch carts, in different places. Today, commerce exists in a different world. It exists in a digital world. And the citizens of this world that we have called digizens are not going to be born of men and women. They are going to be midwifed by corporates, by business. Who is the midwife of these digizens? It is the corporates. So we have a responsibility that as we shift into this digital world, we play the midwife role to make sure that the citizenry of that world moves with us. So we find ourselves in a situation where businesses and corporations have advanced and the citizenry has not advanced as much. And we are trying to pull the citizens into a space that we are occupying. But we have not moved with them. It is easier for inclusion if we also play the role of ensuring that we are midwifing their digizenship, that they migrate into this space where we are doing business, they migrate into this space where we are doing any other activities that we may be carrying out. It will definitely require support in terms of ethics, in terms of fair access, in terms of integrity, accountability, and any other issues that may come in harm's way for our populations as we migrate into this space. It is a space that businesses are existing and transacting in. I also then ask a question. How many businesses actually have community digital service centers, where those in our communities who can't transact digitally because they don't have access either to gadgets, smart gadgets, or they don't have access to data, can actually walk in and carry out their transactions on shared gadgets or other shared services that we may present to them. And this is part and parcel of the midwifery that I'm talking about. We need to be in the communities, supporting our communities to migrate into the space where we are now doing business and where we are accelerating our business activities. I also ask a question. How much product evolution has taken place in tandem with the type of the changing citizen that we are now looking at? So if we look at our products, if we look at our businesses over the past 10, 15 years, is it the same product that we are trying to onboard these people to today, or we have a completely different product that is pointing towards where they are so that we meet the people where they are, as it were? I also think that the digital transition has come with some levels of liberalization and liberties for our populations. They have a lot of access to a lot of information that we ought to create products where we are a highway to certain things that they themselves have decision-making power on, but we provide the ability for them to actually access maybe other investments or other products that are maybe not ours, but we provide a highway because they do have access to open source information that has been talked about earlier on. So I am just going to ask to talk about the key points in terms of what we could do going forward. I think number one is be fruitful and multiply. Business ought to play a midwife role in creating the Digizens of this world. Number two, we need policymakers to move with us when we train our teams or upskill them. What will it take to include some government officials in our upskilling programs? If it doesn't come with significant costs, because the technical people that are in our government departments drafting and crafting the regulations that then govern where we are going sometimes do require this access, and it's not readily available. Incentivize rather than penalize digital transactions. Not all digital transactions are trade transactions. Some are support to families. Co-creation rather than forums for remediation and reaction management is supposed to be the way that we do policy and we do regulations. I would expect that maybe moving forward, we have more forums where we are having policy development challenges that drive our ambitions. I'm happy about the sandboxes that have been mentioned, but we do need more public forums where we are able to actually proffer some innovative ideas around policy and provide the market and policymakers with some options. Lastly, for business and policymakers, I would say it is not us against each other. It is us together against the world, and we can create the environment together. Thank you.
Welcome to Identities with Nyari Mashayamombe, your empowerment podcast where we talk about social, economic, and everyday issues that affect us. At Identities Media, we tell human stories that respect the storyteller, honor the viewer, and help build a compassionate and informed society. Our work celebrates unsung heroes and community change makers rising in the spirit of Ubuntu. As a producer and host, Nyari Mashayamombe brings her experience as a development practitioner, marketer, lawyer, storyteller, and filmmaker to ensure that every conversation is grounded, human, and deeply intentional. If you are an individual donor, a foundation, an NGO, or an institution that believes in uplifting marginalized voices, we invite you to financially support this storytelling journey. Your contribution helps us document human stories that shape policy, inspire action, and strengthen communities. We also welcome corporates, NGOs, and institutions to partner with us by sponsoring episodes or seasons, commissioning stories of change, or collaborating on documentaries, docuseries, films, and other impactful storytelling projects. You may also advertise on our platform. To donate, visit www.identitiesmedia.com. To partner or sponsor, contact us through the email and number on the screen. Identities with Nyari Mashayamombe, your empowerment podcast.